coming. Today we're going to take a look at Fusion 360. Um, and I've invited Brett Bailey and Max Moderoso to come to help us out. They're both really, really great at using Fusion. Yes. Um, this meeting is really designed for people who are just getting into Fusion or just getting into CAD drawing. And a little bit of the backstory, during COVID, a lot of us got 3D printers together, and Ted Bergstrom took us through a lot of sort of introduction drawing programs to get us going. But since then, there have been a lot of new members that have gotten 3D printers, and I hear people saying all the time that they don't know where to start, learning how to do CAD. Maybe they're already printing things from Thingiverse or from the Luth prints, but they want to be able to draw some designs on their own. So this is really designed to be an intro course, and we are going to try to keep the train on the tracks where it's can be very difficult because after you use the program for a long time, you do things instinctively and very quickly. And we're gonna try to slow it down and show each step and where each item is found in the menus. There are some shortcuts that you get used to using, and you won't be able to see those on the screen. So we're going to try to show where those are in the menus and not use shortcuts, and kind of explain the nuts and bolts of how to use it. A lot of people have trouble choosing a program even. There are lots of CAD programs to choose from. So one of the questions is why Fusion? Why not one of the others? And that's a really hard question to answer. They're all capable of doing very similar things. Part of it's just taste, whether you like one format over another, or whether a certain one has features that you like more than others, or possibly just the cost. Fusion is a subscription model. So you can pay $85 a month. You can pay yearly. I think the current price is $680 a year, or there's a longer term if you really want to set yourself up. But it is subscription based as opposed to Rhino, where you actually buy the program and you own it and you don't have to pay any more in the future. So that may be something that drives your decision. But at some point you have to choose one, try it out, or watch a bunch of YouTube videos and see which one you like most. I use Fusion. I really like that it has CAD and CAM in one program. Very quickly switch back and forth between those two. Let's see. The other thing that people find when they first open the program is it can be a bit overwhelming. There are lots of features. There are lots of menus. And there are menus within menus. But I think if there's one takeaway from today, it's that you can do a lot with a very small fraction of the tools that are contained in the program. So we're going to try and boil it down to where with a very small set of tools, you can make some very useful things very quickly, and then take time later on to explore the more in-depth features. So we've broken up the show today into a couple of different sections. Brett's going to go over the overall environment, and he's going to go over some settings that make the interface quicker and easier to use. And he's going to go over some organizational things that will make your drawings, as they get more complex, a little bit easier to handle. The drawings we're going to do today are basically one or a few components, but if you were to, design a full guitar with all the hardware, you would have a lot of components, and you'd want to make sure things are very organized. Otherwise, they can get very confusing. So that's where we'll start. And then from there, we're going to go in and we're going to do 3 simple drawings, all objects that are easily recognizable and not too complex. We're going to go through those drawings, and then I'm going to pass it over to Max, and he's going to take some of those drawings and add a little bit of complexity with the parametric features, meaning that you can set it up to where you can enter variables and have the program auto-generate using those parameters. And with that, I think we'll pass it over to Brett. Is there anything You guys would like to add to that before we get into it?
I would like to add that Fusion or Autodesk does a sale on Fusion 360 about once a year. That is the time to lock in the cheaper price. So if you subscribe for the year, I think it's like 30% off. If you subscribe at that price, they grandfather you into that price forever as long as you keep paying. Um, and it does work on the monthly basis as well. I think Dan Earlywine had a question too, asking if we needed Fusion today.
No,
We don't have to have it today.
no, we were just planning on you following along, but if you had it and wanted to try and recreate what we're doing, you would certainly be welcome to.
Thanks.
And also, I think if anybody has any questions, please jump in. We particularly if we do something and you can't follow the clicks and things that we're doing, stop us because someone else is probably wondering the same thing. We want this to be as clear as possible.
Good. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. All right. We all see a guitar?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the first things I can see about this user interface that bothers me and would bother a lot of people if you have to sit there and stare at it for about 12 hours is the background is white and it's super bright. Down at the bottom of this screen here, we have these different settings. Some of them are just for panning around, looking at certain parts, but we get into display settings. And we can go up to environment and we can change to say dark sky, which is a little bit lighter on the eyes. Gray room is a little bit darker. I don't have a set one that I use all the time. I kind of just change it depending on which direction the wind's blowing that day. I do tend to lean more into the gray and dark sky though, just because it's easier on the eyes. So for today though, I'm gonna keep it white because it is a little bit easier to see everything. But just if you want to change that later. Another thing is a lot of people are using Rhino, and with Rhino, you get to see 4 different viewpoints at a time. And Fusion, typically it's set up just to view one area at a time, one viewpoint. But you can set it up. So again, down in the same menu, just to the right is viewports, and you can hit multiple views and it'll give you all of your views that you need. Just undo that.
I missed it. Where was that button?
All right, hold on a second. I'll get it back.
Yeah, to do it from the little menus on the top right quadrant, you have it right there. The display setting.
What,
On
in
your-
preferences?
No, on the top right view, you see like the display preferences, like the little
Oh,
icons.
yeah. Sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
just-
it moved around on me.
it just goes there for some reason. You can go in a single view. Yeah,
How did you
just
get
on the
into that
bottom
view?
there. You
On the bottom. Oh, okay.
it's the rightmost. You do multiple views.
This has already been a fruitful endeavor for me.
Check.
Brett, why would you what's handy about that? Why would a person want that view? Oh, you muted, I think. Brett, I can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you, Brett.
I think he's working on it. Looks like his mic went rogue.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, mic died. So yeah, you would use that if you were, say, extruding something downward from the top and you wanted to also view the side angle of that.
Awesome.
I personally don't use that. I kind of pan around as I'm moving. So I'm on a Mac. If you're on a computer or even like a PC or using a mouse with a wheel, you can typically just click in on the wheel and that'll give you your panning motion, which will be like an orbiting sort of thing like this. Being on a Mac, I don't have that wheel on my mouse. And my other option is holding shift and moving with 2 fingers around on the trackpad. Now, this is really hard to control, and I do not like doing it. So I've bought this thing. It's a space mouse from a company called 3D Connection. And it's basically just a 6-axis joystick that allows me to basically manipulate the model almost as if I'm just holding it in my hand. You do not need that, but I would recommend peripherals for orbiting. It just makes everything way quicker. So up at the top here, we have solid, surface, mesh, sheet metal, plastic, utilities, and manage. So solid is going to give you basically all your solid objects. And what I mean by that is they're solid. It's not like a box. It's completely infilled. When we go over to surface, then we get into basically just creating walls of a box that are the thickness of your sketch line. And both of those are very useful. I use those every single day, back and forth, the tools that are within here. Mesh, sheet metal, plastics, utilities, I don't really touch. But when we get into like creating, just to show you like a sketch. So you'll hit create sketch. It's always in that top corner next to the design tab. And it'll open up another menu next to manage. And that'll give you all your sketch tools. So some of these are just basic: line, rectangle, circle, mirror. Then you get into like controls point splines, which will give you like a curvy line, which you can then manipulate by dragging the points. So these tools might not be there for you up and just ready to go, ready to click on. They will be in this drop-down menu. How to put them up in there is to hover over the tool itself. It'll click on these, it'll give you these 3 dots. You'll click on those dots. Oh, it lagged on me, hold on. And then select pin to toolbar. And now that should be pinned to my toolbar. I think I have too many tools up there currently for it to show. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unpin one. So I've got, let's say, go down to projection or include. I've got my include 3D geometry. I'm gonna unpin that. And then there's my 3-point rectangle that we just pinned up there before. And that's the same way for all of these things, like modify, you can pin all of these different tools. So a lot of these tools, it just takes time of like kind of just clicking on them, using them, finding out what they use. There's a lot of them. One really cool one I would say would be like blend curve. So I'm just going to draw 2 lines in space. And if I want to make them connect tangentially, I can hit blend curve and then click the 2 lines and it'll just automatically generate a line. I don't love that because you don't have a whole lot of control. Sometimes you need to do it though. Anyway, that's getting a little deep. So one of the main things with Fusion and all other CAD programs, I'd say, is the vocabulary. Knowing how to communicate what things are, how they're connected, how they relate to each other will help you immensely. Just even for understanding why something might not be working. And that's where all these little symbols and constraints come in. So if I draw a line, 2 boxes will pop up. One is going to be my measurement. So we're going to make that, say, 5 inches. The next one, which is covered up by the specify next point thing, is my angle. I can't click on that because it keeps running away from my mouse. So I'm going to hit tab and that'll bring me over to that. So if I wanted this straight up and down, I could type 90, right? That's awesome. But typing information in both boxes is kind of a waste of time. So I would just draw my line.
Hey Brett, can you start a new tab that's clean, just so that
Yes, sorry.
is it gonna crash it?
No, it doesn't like run and zoom in this at the same time.
Okay.
Should be okay. Okay, so again, I'll draw my line. I'll type in the length of 5 inches. And now I want this vertical. So I'm gonna throw on a horizontal vertical constraint just by clicking this. And that worked because I had the line pre-selected. Say I didn't have the line pre-selected, I would then hit the horizontal vertical constraint first and then hit the line, and then it'll give me the same thing. And I know this line is vertical because it has this little symbol next to it. Say I want to change that later to an angle or whatever that's not vertical, I am going to have to delete that symbol. So I will click on the symbol itself and then it's gone. And I can manipulate the line out of vertical all I want. Another really important tool in constraints is tangency. So that is when you have a curve that flows into another curve or line smoothly, like it's perfect. So just to demonstrate that, I'll throw a circle down, hit tangent, I'll click on my line, I'll click on my circle. Now it's moved it over. If I move this line up, you'll see now it's like perfectly connected. I can trim these. So this is in the modify menu. I can hit trim. Get that out of there. I should be able to trim this, but it's nope. Okay. That's weird. Anyway, yeah, that's the trim tool. Another cool tool in there is midpoint. So say I want to draw up a point in the middle of this line. I will click point. I've got a shortcut set up on my keyboard for that. So click on the point, hit midpoint, and then click on the line. And now you've dropped a line into the middle, or a point into the middle. I'm going to draw another line. And I'm going to go over to here to my perpendicular constraint. So that, click there and click this line. And that's going to make them perpendicular to each other. I know they are because they both have this symbol. When I click on that symbol, they both light up. Now this line, if I click on it down in the bottom right corner, it'll say one sketch line length, and it'll tell me the length, 4.357. If I want that to be 5 inches, I have two options. I can hit D, which will give me a dimension, and I can change that to 5 inches. Or, because I have one that's 5 inches, I can make these equal. So I'll go over to my equal constraint. Now they're both 5. And I can actually just add a dimension on. So then now we can see that they're both 5 without clicking on it and looking in the corner. Now, if I want this line to move to that dot in the center, I can hit M for move, which is also in your modify menu down at move copy. And I'll select the line. Move this over. All right, so right now my line or my pivot point is set right in the center of that. If I want my pivot point, say on the end, I can hit set pivot, move it over, and then I'll have to hit that check mark that comes up over the set pivot thing. Now it's on that end. I can rotate this, do whatever. We're gonna keep it 90. Yeah, because it's perpendicular. So I'm gonna move that to that center marking. Hit origin point of the end of the line. My target point is the center. And then now they are connected. Another way of doing that would be just to go to your constraints again. You'll find coincident. You can click on that dot and your target point, and now they're attached. And being coincident, they will never separate. Sometimes that can be hard because you might want to separate it. And finding this constraint, no matter how far you zoom in, can be very difficult to get. And sometimes it just pops up when you hover over. They made it easy. You can right click, and in that drop down, there's a delete coincident tool, which helps out a ton of times because you can have like 9 different lines kind of stacked up on each other with all different dimensions, and you need to unclip one of them. And there you go. Also in the constraints is this lock. I use this often when I just don't want things to move. Now, here's the thing that just happened. So, and there's 2 ways of doing, or there's a lot of ways of doing this, but if I lock this, it goes green, but we saw this line went black. That now means that this line is fully defined. So it's not just floating in space because it's locked to this. A more proper way of doing that would be to dimension from our datum. So now it knows, okay, it's 1.8805 from the datum point, and it's 5 inches long, and it's vertical, and it's fully constrained. So we cannot move that. That's something to watch out for when you're doing your sketches. If you can get them fully constrained and fully defined, it's always best to. Sometimes you can't. Like headstock shapes are kind of wild in that sometimes you just can't define an edge. Or you can define everything and it just won't constrain itself and turn fully black. That can be a problem. Most of the time, it's not. It's a problem if you're trying to do parametrics, but we'll get into that later. Oh yeah, concentric. So this will help if you're doing like recessed tuners or any sort of recessed hole. You have a hole in a hole. So I've got this circle already. I want to put this circle in the middle of it. I've already showed you the move command, but it's kind of cumbersome for what we're trying to do here. I'm going to hit concentric. And then I can click on my two circles. And now they are centered with each other. There's more of these like collinear, symmetry, curvature. Those are typically not really even in my arsenal. I'm more focused above that. Concentric, midpoint, fixed, unfixed, perpendicular, parallel, equal, tangent, coincident, horizontal, vertical. Another way of doing that circle would be to just do an offset. So up in my modify menu, I can click offset, click my desired shape I want to offset, and then I can type in the amounts I want to. So let's just say like 1/2 inch. And I can actually flip that so it goes either way. When I hit OK, we're going to get 2 more symbols that pop up telling me that these or one of these is an offset of the other. If I double click on them, I can then edit the offset again. So let's change that to, I don't know, 300,000. Sweet. So I am going to put this line coincident with this edge here that creates a 90-degree angle. So if I don't want this corner sharp, and there's a lot of times we don't because the things we're using to cut pockets with are round, I can hit my fillet tool, which in the drop down should be right at the top. And there's 2 things that could happen here. I can select both lines individually, or if it lets me, usually it does. No, I'm gonna have to. Sometimes, most of the time, if you select right in the corner, it'll give you your fillet automatically, and you don't have to click twice. So that'll just round out the corner. Let's do that 1/4 inch. Bam. So now that's created a dimension, and it's given me 2 tangents constraints as well. So that tells me that this corner now flows perfectly into these lines. And I think if I delete that, if I do blend curve, it'll give me the same one. It should. So one thing with Fusion I found is, yeah, it gives me something bendy. One thing I found with Fusion is sometimes things don't work all the time. And you need to have multiple ways of achieving a result. This can be just extruding. So extruding a shape and then combining it with another shape. And I can show you an example of that. I'll do that in a second. There's another tool I want to show you. So extend. So say I have a wall or a line up here. And I want this line to reach up there. I'm going to take away my dimension. So just click on it, hit backspace. I'm going to hit this extend tool, and that's just going to shoot it right up to the line. And then I can go back in, I can trim these. And then we'll make that even with this. So I'm gonna let that do the 1 inch. I'm gonna delete that. This is just showing you the equal constraint again. Let me click on you. There you go. All right. So now this is equal to this corner, and it only has one dimension controlling the whole thing. So I don't have to go around and change them all to 1/2 inch. If I want them all 1/2 inch, I can just change the one and everything will go with it. That's helpful for when you're doing your face dots on your fretboards. Because it sucks to have to go through and click on like 16 dots and resize them all when you can just do it once. In this modify, there is the change parameters menu. Max is going to get into that. It gets pretty heavy. It's fun though. In these tools, so I've shown you drawing lines, drawing circles. We've got splines. I like using control point splines more so than I forget what the other one is. I think it's T-spline. Because I'll show you the two differences. So this one I just put up was a control spline. The fit point spline behaves way differently. So with a control point spline, I'm controlling these radiuses with these control points here. With the control points or the fit point spline, I control them directly at the point. And this could totally just be a preference thing. I find this harder to control. Also in here, we have our slots. So I will use these for, like, I use them as like a T-track for the 12 top panel glue up jig. I've used them for carbon fiber slots before, but typically I'll just sketch those in. But in there, so there's a lot of options for how you want to draw your slot. Some of them are on an arc. Some of them are just straight. So just to cover the straight ones, I'm going to go center to center. So much like drawing a line, it's just going to draw your line first. Once you set your endpoint, it'll start giving you a width. So let's just say, yeah, 600 thou, perfect. So with that, it's undefined, no dimensions. I can go in there, hit D. And then that'll add my dimension. I don't know why. And then, so since we did center to center, I can click just that line and then it'll give me my center to center dimension. If I click on the outside instead, it should give me the outer, no, give me the inner. So to do the outer, you're gonna have to either draw lines, extend these lines, or just go with the end-to-end slot, which is the overall slot. There's other ones like center point slot, so same thing, but you're starting from the center. I don't use that personally. You might find a use for it. Arcs are incredibly useful. So just really standard 3-point arc. This. So I've drawn 2 endpoints, and then right now with my mouse, I'm dragging up and down. And then I can define this radius just by hitting D, or I believe it's under modify, finding dimension and clicking it. And then I'll type in my dimensions. Now it's 3. I have a tool up here, intersection curve. This is kind of advanced. We can get into that later. Another tool in here that is really helpful though is project. So I'm going to go over to my other file just to show you how this would be used. So with this body shape, I've drawn it once for the top and the back for like the perimeter, which would make sense. But to define my other parts on the front, I needed to project my back onto it. So I started with the bottom of my guitar. And when I started to create the top drawing of it, these are green because I just locked them in place. But all I did, let's delete these, was looked at my bottom drawing. I hit P, which will bring up your project. It's a standard shortcut to it. But again, you can go create and then project include, and you'll find it in there. So I've selected my project tool. Now, as I hover over these lines, you'll see red lines pop up. And I typically look at things on an angle that might bother some people. Looking at it from the front, when I hover, it kind of just looks like that. Anyway, so I'm going to click on my edges that I want to project to the surface. So it's those two in this case. Hit OK. And now it is the exact same shape as that. This can become helpful too, like you're projecting string through holes that you've drawn through the back onto the top. If you're projecting dots that you've drawn on the bottom of the fretboard for whatever reason to the surface, or an inlay to the surface. Your headstock shape, inlays, yeah, you'll find projecting, you'll be using it quite a bit. So I'm just gonna undo these. Rectangular pattern or circular pattern is really helpful for making copies of things evenly spaced. That'll help you when you're drawing your rosettes. So just for like the rectangular pattern, I can select, let's select all of it. So I've selected my slot. I can type in how many I want and how, gotta get the direction right. So the quantity of them and how far they go out. So same thing if you're drawing a rosette and you want to like do a block pattern around it, you can just draw your one block. It's getting a little glitchy. I don't know if I'll be able to do this. So I just draw a line within that circle. I can then click on circular pattern. I'll select my line that I want to move around. I'll select my center point, which is there. And then again, I'll type in like how many I want. and then hit OK. Use. So that can be incredibly useful for doing any sort of rosette pattern. And then again, it spits out a little symbol. In this case, it's in the center, and you can double click that and make all your edits. So that kind of covers just the sketch workspace. I did blow over a lot of things, a few things. But I do encourage everyone to play around in this. Because yeah, just clicking on things and seeing what they do really, really helps the learning curve of this. So if I hit finish sketch, it's now popped up a sketch down here. This is typically not how I build up a file, but just for this, I'll show you. Under create in the solids tab, you'll have all these cool things. You'll have extrude, revolve, sweep, loft, yada, yada, yada. Extrude is when you want to make something 3D. So I'm going to click on, say, just that shape. And if I look at this from the side and type in 1 inch, it's going to extrude that up 1 inch. And what that's done after I hit OK is it's created a body. So this is a fully solid object. I can now go in here to my modify menu and manipulate it if I need to. Say add a fillet, add a chamfer. So let's do a chamfer around the edge. Oh. So I accidentally selected a face there. How I corrected that was reselecting it. There are a couple tools within the surface tab where you can't just reselect it for whatever reason. Fusion hasn't coded it, so you can, and you'll just have to exit out. So there's an 1/8 inch chamfer around that edge. I just did that by selecting the edges and typing in 0.125. So let me just plug this in real quick. All right. One of the most used tools, and I'll show you this in a practical setting, is lofting. There is 2 different ways of lofting. There's the surface tab, there is the solids tab. Depending on what I'm doing, I will use one or the other. I'll show you an example of when I would use the surface tab. It's back here. So down at the bottom here is my timeline. So everything here is everything I've done, all the moves I've made, aside from the sketches themselves. If I want to edit those, I'll have to go into them. So just to show you this loft function, I've created this. Sorry. Yeah, you're fine. To edit this loft, I'm going to double click on it. Where you would find that originally would be in your surface tab up at the top here. It looks like this. It's that weird shape. If you hit on the drop down menu, you'll find it's the 4th down. So what the loft tool does is it takes one shape and morphs it into the other, and very smoothly. You can manipulate it by drawing what are called rails. They'll be like helper surfaces. So say you want a volute to have a perfect 1/2 inch arc. Well, you're gonna have to draw that 1/2 inch arc on your side profile, have it defined, but then you can use that as the ramp. So it'll tell the loft to ride up it. It's getting a little heavy, but we'll get there. So deselect those. So I've got my 2 neck profiles, my 1st fret profile, my 17th fret profile. This is just how I've designed my specific guitars. So I will click on my 1st fret profile. I'll click on my 17th. They are different. So if we look at them from the face, let me turn. So larger one, obviously my heel, asymmetric. The 1st fret area is just elliptical. So if I click on that 2nd shape there, it's now created a solid or a surface, which is essentially, that's the shaft of my neck. It is. So I'll hit OK. And then that spits it out. Getting the wheel of death right now.
Can you talk a little bit about how you organize your drawings if you're going to have multiple components?
Yes, yeah, actually. I'll go right back to the beginning here. All right, so when I started drawing, typically like the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click on this browser menu here. I'm gonna hit new component. And that's gonna spit out, I can name it here. You don't have to, you can rename it later. But that's gonna spit out basically a separate drop-down menu, almost like a container for your parts, your bodies, your sketches, your construction planes, everything. So it's separating, say you have all your sketches for your neck and all your sketches for your bodies and your sketches for your fretboards. You don't want those all jumbled up together because it's going to be hard to organize that and find what you need. So for every single part, before I start drawing a sketch, I will hit new component. Sometimes you can get away with doing it after. A lot of the times, Fusion will like to spit out an error and tell you you can't move something into a different folder. So it is kind of like, make sure you're doing this as you're moving into another part of the instrument or whatever it is you're drawing. So show you that here. I've got master sketches, fingerboard variations. These are downloaded from Austin Shaner off of YouTube. Now I have gone in and redone a lot of the equations and how it was set up just to work for what I kind of was going for. But it is a very, very good place to kind of start just for fretboards as a generator. So after that has been in, I've created a new component for my bodies. Underneath that, all you see is origin. That's basically, well, it is just the datum point, the 0 point of this whole thing. From there, well selected. So here's the important part. This circle has a black dot in the center of it. That means it's activated or it's active. If I hover over body, another one will pop up. I want to activate that if I'm working on that. If I don't, anything I do will just go into this main container, and it's not fun. It's just too much of different parts in one spot. So from there, I've made a bunch of sketches. So I've got my pickups, my bridge, my body back, my body top, my furls. And then I've just started extruding. Actually, hold on. So one thing about when you activate a component, it takes away every other move that does not pertain to that component off of your timeline. So this menu at the bottom becomes a lot cleaner as you move around between parts. One of the problems is if you're on an active component and you start moving your slider, so I've moved it here. When I go to the full thing again, like reactivate the whole drawing, those extrusions happened way later down the road. So it's now moved my timeline like right to the end almost. So it's gonna move that back.
You make different components so that you can focus on those parts with a much shorter timeline. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, like when you get into the neck, you'll have like your headstock face, headstock side, headstock 3D, and then you'll have your heel, and it'll be heel top, heel face, heel back, heel side, and it's like that's almost what, 8 drawings just right there, like 8 different sketches. To have that mixed in with like your bridge and just your pickups,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So yeah, back to activating the whole drawing. So I usually start by populating as much as I can with sketches. I don't like having models going other than like neck shaft. So once I've got basically all of my assets, and after I've moved on from the body, I have created a new component. It's got all its own sketches, bodies, construction, everything. So I'm going to slide this over. So as I slide through the timeline, it's gonna start recomputing everything. So what happens when you change something or move the timeline is it wants to reload the timeline all the way from the beginning. So basically what it's doing is running through a massive math problem to spit out your model every time you move it. So that being said, you don't want unnecessary steps bogging down your computer for no reason. Say if you have like an extrusion and you did it 1 millimeter, but then you actually wanted it 2 millimeters. So then you extruded it again, another 1 millimeter. Now you have 2 instances of extrusions when you only need 1. And that is just throwing extra work at the computer when you don't need to. It doesn't need it.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to the overview? I think we can move on to some drawings.
Yeah, I mean, we can move on. Yeah, a lot of stuff can come later. There's like what you can do with components and why they're important.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to that after some quick drawings.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so if you undo your screen, I will, I'm gonna share mine.
Sweet.
Okay,
Are you guys all with us?
I am.
you are that?
Yes.
Okay, so I came up with a couple of different easily recognizable objects that we can just do simple drawings from. One, just a simple humbucker template. That's going to be our first drawing. Second, we're going to draw up a radius block. That should look familiar to everybody. And then finally, we're going to do a T knob. This is from a proper workstation. I had a broken knob, so I drew up one to 3D print. And so I wanted to do is just walk through the drawing from the beginning. But I'm going to start. Let's see. Oops. Thanks. I'm going to start with a blank project. Everybody see that and my cursor?
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm going to create a new component, going off what Brett said to try and make a clean drawing. We're really only going to have one item in this, but just to start with, with a good discipline, we're going to do this and we're going to put humbucker template. Okay. I'm going to quickly start by just showing you. Brett went through a bunch of the different tools, but I'm going to add on to that just a little bit. So I'm going to go up here to create sketch, and we're going to get our 3 axes. If you look up here in the top right, you'll see a cube that represents the faces. Okay, if I click on the top, it'll bring me around to where I'm looking straight down on the object. And I can tilt it up a little bit so that we can kind of get an idea of our axes. The red is the X, green is the Y, and the blue is the Z. So I'm going to create a sketch by clicking create sketch, and then it wants to know where I want that sketch. And I'm going to put it on this face. So we're looking straight down from the top. Okay. I'm going to draw a few nonsense things here just so we can go over some of the behaviors of the program. The first thing to understand is that if I draw a line, that's a solid line, and that's something that's going to be used in our drawing. Okay. I can click on that. Over here in this menu, you see this construction tab. I can make that a construction line. That's no longer a solid line. It's just there as a placekeeper to have some sort of dimension. It's possible I want to, have a visual for 2 circles that are going to be placed a certain distance apart. And I might use that construction line. But it is not actually, you can't create a solid from that line. Okay. This up here, this undo is probably the most important button.
Can I interject on that really quick, James?
Yep.
The reason why you would do that is because if that was a solid line, then it would divide those 2 circles, and it would intuit, or it would potentially intuit an extrude where you don't want an extrude, and then you would have to select a bunch of things. So in general, if
I can
What's
do an
that?
example of that. If I change that back to a solid line, now it's bisected this center circle into 2 separate shapes. Okay.
which is super annoying if that's not what you're trying to do, because
Right.
then it leads to extra clicking.
And the other thing that this demonstrates is that whenever a space is enclosed, you can hover over it and you get a dark blue circle. That means that you can extrude that into a 3D dimension, in a 3rd dimension, and make a solid out of it. If I were to take a line, but if I were to make a rectangle, that's solid. But if I were to grab that one line and change it to a construction line, it's no longer enclosed, and I can't extrude that into a solid object. And then up here on the top left, you'll see the undo button. And this is, when you're drawing something, you're constantly doing things and deciding that wasn't the right direction. So having a back button that you can continually hit it, and it'll just go through your timeline all the way back to the beginning. Same with the redo. I can redo all these things just by pressing redo. there's a little triangle to the left of each one. So if I knew I wanted to undo all the way back to drag sketch, I could do that, and it would take me back in the timeline to there. Let's see. A little bit more about constraining a drawing. So if I were to take the rectangle tool and make this rectangle, there are these horizontal and vertical constraints on it, but nothing else is constrained. I can grab each of these and manipulate. If I went up here to this sketch dimension tool, and I gave that, and I gave this line a dimension, okay, and then, sorry, dimension this tool, I'm sorry, dimension that side. Now, I can't move. It is constrained that rectangle to where I can move the rectangle because it's not locked down in space. It's still blue, but I've given it dimensions that it's not going to change. Now this side, yeah. If I were, like Brett said, go up to coincident, and I said I want this corner to be on the origin, the whole thing turns black because now it has an anchor in space. And I can no longer drag any part of that. And you can use that to your advantage because there's some things that you want to change and some things that you want to be able to drag around. And I think with that, we've gone over the majority of what we need to start making the drawings. I'm just gonna go all the way back to where we started. I'm going to create a new sketch we're looking straight down, and we're going to make that humbucker template. It's really simple. Up here at the top, you see this 2-point rectangle tool. Well, I find it really more useful in a scenario like this to have a center rectangle where the rectangle starts and is anchored at the origin. So if I click once on the origin, I'll start my rectangle and it'll give me 2 spaces for the dimensions. I recorded these dimensions earlier. If you were doing this, you would be measuring your pickup. Okay, so that's going to be the rectangle where the feet of the humbucker reside. And I'm going to go ahead and do another center point rectangle. And this would be for the body of the pickup. Again, I get my 2 dimensions that I can add. I'm going to do 1.6 and 2.8. Okay, so now we have a shape that we can all recognize as the basic outline of the humbucker. I'm going to want this to be set into, center rectangle, a plate this big enough for us to clamp down. I'm just going 5x7. That's within the footprint of the 3D printer, so I could 3D print this. Okay. And if I hover over the different sections, you can see that there are several enclosed spaces. These dash lines are just constructions lines that are created when you make a center point rectangle. Now, I can go ahead and do it just like this. If you were using a bearing router bit, it would generate the fillets in the corners, no problem. But we're just going to add them into our drawing using the fillet tool. Brett demonstrated this. If you click on the fillet tool, and then you click 2 sides, it will allow you to enter a dimension. We're going to use a 3/8 inch router bit, so our radius is going to be 0.1. Really 0.1875, but we're going to do 0.188, and that's going to give us a fillet. Okay. Now I need to go around and do that for each of the corners. There's a shortcut that if I hold down the shift and I select several corners, I can make them all the same. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with these corners as well. Now, we have something we basically have all our dimensions. We just need to make it three-dimensional. And the only thing that we need to extrude is this exterior portion. So if I click on that, and I come up here to the solid tab and hit the extrude, it's going to give me an arrow. I could just drag this up to a dimension that I want. Or if I want to be more precise, it gives me the entry block, and I could put 1/4 of an inch. Okay. So there we have it. That did about what would really be 3 minutes of work. We have something useful we could 3D print and get to work. And before having a printer, this is the kind of thing that if I needed some sort of custom template, I would spend quite a while making it and struggling with making it symmetrical and look nice. And at this point, I would rather spend 2 or 3 minutes drawing it up, send it to the printer, and do something else while it's printing. Any questions on that? No? Pretty clear? Okay. Well, I'm going to move on to something that has a few more features. Got this radius block, something that should be familiar to everybody. I'm going to make a new sketch, and we're going to make that from scratch, just so everybody has kind of a visual of what we're going for. Okay, again, I'm going to come over and I'm going to create a new component. Call this radius. Then I'm going to create a sketch. This time, I want to do it from the front face rather than looking straight down, because we're going to extrude it lengthwise. So I'm going to click on that face and start drawing here. Again, I'm going to start with a center point rectangle and do the basic block. Okay. And then I'll come up to create, and I'll get the arc tool, 3-point arc. I'm going to go from this corner to this corner. I'm going to click enter. It's going to give us the arc, but it doesn't give us the option to dimension it straight away. We have to come up here to the sketch dimension tool. Click like that, and we'll do a 7.25 radius. And here you can see I've got this extra space down here that ultimately we're not going to want. So in this situation, I'm just going to choose to make that a construction line. I'll click on it to highlight it, come over here to the construction line, make it a construction line. Now, the only enclosed object we have is something that's starting to resemble a radius block. And we could extrude at this point, it would be functional, but it's not very pleasing to the eye, or probably very pleasing to use. So I'm going to go in and add a few more features. I'm going to make some cutouts on either side here. To do that, I'm going to take the circle tool. And if you see, if I hover over this line and I get right to the center happens to be right at the origin. A little triangle will pop up. That means that I'm at the center line. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click once and drag out, and then I'm going to enter the dimension. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Now, if we hover over the center, you can see that we have 2 cutouts that go along either side. Now, I would like for this top corner to be rounded. So again, I'm going to go up to our fillet tool. Click on the fillet tool, and I'm going to give these 1/4 inch fillets. Okay. Now that's starting to look like what we would want. In fact, if we go ahead right now and select the enclosed space, and then we go to our solid and extrude, we push this, say 5 inches. We have something that looks like what you would get from StewMac, one of their maple
Hot dang.
Radius calls. And I'm going to print this out on the 3D printer, and there's a lot of material in there. So I want to go and go ahead and make this hollow to a point, something that's going to cut down the amount of material and time it takes to print. So if you look down here, can everybody see the timeline where I'm circled at the bottom?
Yep.
We've got a visual representation of the two things that we've done. We've got our sketch, and then we've got our extrude. Well, we can just go back to the sketch, double click on that, and it will bring it back up and we can modify it. What I want to do is make this a 1/4 inch thick all the way around. So I'm going to do an offset. But if I click on offset and I click it here, you can see it's highlighting the first rectangle. We really want it to go around those radius cutouts. So I'm going to cancel out of that. Come up to our clipper tool. I'm going to get rid of the things that we really don't want in there. Okay. Hit escape to get rid of the tool. Now I'm going to go to the offset and I'm going to click on offset and it chooses what's left. Fusion does a remarkable job of anticipating what you want it to do if you think about it, but often it's going to not choose correctly. The majority of the time it actually does. But sometimes you need to go back and remove some things that are confusing it. And so here I've got basically a push-pull knob. I could choose which direction and how far I want to go. I'm going to make that 1/4 inch. And then if I hit finish sketch, it doesn't know that the extrude that came later, that I don't want that center portion. So I'm going to double click on that extrude. And now you can see I have two separate shapes that are enclosed. It thinks both of them are part of that extrude. So I'm just going to click on that center and it's going to unextrude the center. Okay. So now we have something that takes up a lot less space or a lot less material. But I'm a little concerned that this center portion, doesn't really have much support. So I'm going to put a center support in here. Go back to my original drawing. I'm going to make a construction line. Actually, I don't really need that. So I'm going to make a regular line. I'm going to start in the center. You can see that small triangle pops up, meaning we're at the very center. And I'm gonna make a line that's 1/8 of an inch that way. Then I'm gonna extend that down to the bottom. And I'm gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. Line tool. And now, let's see. Now if we finish sketch. Again, it doesn't know what we did previously. So I'm going to go back to extrude. Oh, did something wrong.
Yeah, the line doesn't go all the way to the bottom. It's not coincident.
Make sure I go all the way to there we go. Now if I go back to my extrude, I can click on there. Now we've got some center support. I'm happier with that. It's not very pleasing visually. I would like for there to be a little bit of a web between these. So I'm going to go up here to the fillet tool, and I can do this in the solid environment. I could come back into my sketch and I can make a fillet around each of these. That's an option. Or in this solid area, I can come up to fillet. Okay. I have to kind of angle it, but I can select all 4 of these edges that are in here. And over here in the fillet dialog, it says 4 edges selected. We don't have a radius set yet. I can drag these. I'm going to make those 2/10. And we end up with something that really is pretty attractive and probably very functional. Any questions on that? Anything that I glossed over that wasn't understandable?
That's really good. Do we lose Dan? Dan Earlywine, you still there? I think we lost Dan.
Um, I'm gonna. I think we'll
I'm
just move.
here.
What's that?
I'm here.
All right.
Okay.
Was that pretty clear?
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna move on to the third sketch, which is gonna bring in a few more ideas. And that's this one. Okay, so over here on the left, you'll see that I have three components. If I just highlight the knob component, that's what we're drawing. These other two components are items that I've pulled the drawing in from McMaster-Carr because I don't want to have to create this bolt if I can easily download an example of it. And the same goes with the nut. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new drawing. I have a few dimensions that I measured from the bolt, but you could download those drawings from McMaster-Carr and take measurements off them to start with. So again, I'm going to create a new component. And this is going to be our knob. Okay. I'm going to create a new sketch. And then I'm going to draw it looking down on it vertically from the top. So I'm going to select the plane that's in the XY. Okay. Now I know from measuring the knob that I'm actually recreating that the center portion is going to be 1/4 of an inch. Okay. I'm going to create a construction line 1.25 inches. Now that's a solid line. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to go over here and make that a construction line. That's because that's the center of our knob. I need that as a dimension, but I don't actually want that to be part of my drawing. And then I'm going to draw 1/4 of the knob. Know that this is going to be, sorry, 0.14. And then I'm going to draw another line, and I want it to be tangent with this circle. Now I could add a constraint, but I can also just go to the edge of the circle and drag along. And if I get to the right spot, it will locate the tangent. And you can see kind of that when I hit that sweet spot, it actually makes a little tangent symbol there. That saves a lot of time having to go back and put that constraint on there. If I just click there, you'll see that it draws that line with my tangent. Now I can do that 4 times and create my entire knob, but I would like to save time. So I'm going to use a function up here called mirror. Okay, if I click on mirror, it's going to ask me what objects do I want to mirror. And I'm going to select these 2 objects. And then it wants to know what my mirror line is. And I have this construction line. If I click that and hit OK, it will mirror those 2 objects. Now I want to do the same thing on this side, but I don't have a line. So I'm going to add in here, again, a construction line. I'm going to change that to a construction because I don't want it to be part of my drawing. Now I'm going to go back to mirror. I'm going to select this time all 4. And then I'm going to select my mirror line. Okay. We have the basic outline of our knob looking down from above. If you remember, our bolt, we have the hex recessed in the top, and then the bolt comes through the bottom. So we need to put the circle in that the bolt's going to protrude through, and then we need to put the hex that's going to be in the recess. Uh, my drawing. Okay. So I'm going to just do this on the same drawing. I'm going to draw another circle. That's 3/8 of an inch diameter. That's where the bolt will go through. I'm going to go up in the Create tab and I'm going to create a polygon. I'm going to do an inscribe polygon. It means the corners come to the diameter of the circle. I'm going to click on the center. I'm going to drag out. I'm going to intentionally do it off center here so you can see. That's going to be 0.3215. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. Now, I want this to be parallel or horizontal with my x-axis. So I'm going to go up here to the horizontal vertical constraint, click on it, click it, and it will move it into place. So now we have all the basic features we need to create this knob. I'm going to extrude features of this, some of them going down and some of them coming up to make the final shape. So the features that are going to go down, if we think about our knob, are these. I use the shift key to grab both of those enclosed spaces. I'll do it again. So if I grab one, hold the shift, grab the second one. I now have them both selected. I'm going to go over here to solid, extrude. It thinks it wants to go up, but I really want to go down. So it's going to create, I can just use a negative number to indicate that I want it to go down. And I'm going to extrude that negative 0.5 inches. Okay. Then I'm going to go back to our drawing and I'm going to select the pieces that I want to go up. So I've selected those three enclosed shapes. Go back to solid, extrude. And I want that to go. Let's see, okay. Now we have the basic shape of our knob. But I have one concern. And that's that this surface down here where the bolt's going to sit on is right here. And I don't feel like that's going to be very strong. I want to add a little more material in there. And I'm going to demonstrate that by showing a feature called a section analysis. Okay, and this is going to cut our model in half and let us see what's inside the model. So if I use section analysis, it wants me to select a cut plane. Now I want to select the origin, but I can't see it at this point. If you look over here on the left, you can see where it has my origin here. And there's a little eyeball with a cross through it. That means it's hidden. And if I select on it, I can see it. But I have another problem that my model is in the way. So I can go over here to bodies. And I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to click on the eyeball and make it invisible. Then I can select the cut plane that I want. Okay, and then I can go back and put my body back in. I can hide the origin. I can flip around and see it this way, or if I'm, if I had a model where the sides were different, I could just hit this little flip button. It'll show me from the front. Okay. I'm gonna hit OK. And just as we suspected, I'm not really happy with this amount of material in here. So what I want to do is extrude the hexagon up. We have plenty of space up here where the bolt's gonna go. So I'm just gonna select that. Again, go up to solid and extrude. And I'm just going to extrude that up. Now it knows over here in the extrude that I want that to join, or at least that's its best guess. If I could make it do other things. For instance, I could make a new body, which would actually make that a separate piece, or a new component, which would make that another separate piece. But that's not what I want to do in this situation. I want to join it to make this all one piece. Okay. Okay. And now, I really want to see it whole again, but I've got this section analysis. It took me quite a while to figure out how to undo this. But up here, you have this tab added for analysis, and it has this section 1, and the eyeball is showing that it's visible. If I click the eyeball and unshow it, I'll get my original view back. And this is nice because you can go back and forth examining what's happened in the interior of your object. That pretty clear? All right.
Yep.
So at this point, I'm pretty confident that this is going to work. But just for fun, to show another feature, I thought we would bring in the bolt and the nut from the McMaster-Carr and put them in place. This becomes useful, if you're making jigs or something and you're looking for the right component from McMaster-Carr to make it work. You can just bring in a model of anything that they have. I'm going to go over here to this insert. And in this insert menu, there's insert component from McMaster-Carr, and it actually pulls up their website. You can search for anything. Now I know right at the top I want to screw a bolt. I'm going to go down here. I know I want it to be a 3/8 16, a hex bolt. Then we're not making a rocket ship, so we want this low strength steel hex head screw. Okay. And I want it to be, say, I remember the model number, 1 3/4 fully threaded. If I click on that, it opens up a detail of the product where I could order it. It also has this download section for CAD. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download a 3D step file. I just hit download. There we go. And it brings it into the model. Okay, and I have a dialog over here that's going to allow me to move it around and make changes to it before I commit. I'm going to drag it out of the way because it's confusing. It's occupying the same space. I'd also like it to be the orientation of our knob. And so I'm going to grab one of these spinners and I'm going to move it 90 degrees so that it's in the right orientation. Move it, okay. Now we have it. It created a component within my other component that may or may not be what you want to do. You could, if I have it clicked on unsave when I bring it in, it'll create a new component, the same hierarchy as the knob, which might be better, but we're going to go with it as it is now. Now, we've got these two, but they're not in the right orientation. So what I want to do is something called make a joint. If we go up here to this symbol menu, which we haven't messed with yet, got this feature called joint. And that allows you to pick two spots and have them be coincident. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to bring I want one of these faces at the very bottom, point at the very bottom, to sit right inside here, line up with that center symbol. So if I hover over this face, it gives me lots of options. I hold Command, and that locks these options in. If I move from one to the other, it's going to give me many different places where I can make a joint. But if I hover over this face, hold the Command, it locks those in. So now I can select one of those, and I want this point right here. That's my first point, and now it wants to know where I want to put that. And again, if I go down into this model, hold the Command and hit that, it'll move the bolt right into position. And we can go up and we can look at our section analysis. You can see that it's a good fit.
That animation was super satisfying.
Wasn't that nice? And then we'll just we'll do the knob. Okay, so we're gonna hit OK. I'm sorry, the nut. Insert, McMaster car, nuts, 3/8/16, X nut, the strike steel. We can pretty much do any one of these. And we're going to download the step. And we're going to go again. I'm going to move it out of the way. It's in the right orientation, so I'm going to click OK. Now I want it to sit centrally located on here. It's a bit hard to do because I've got the bolt in the way and it wants to select the threads. But again, using our eyeball, we can come over to the bolt and we can temporarily deselect that so that it's not getting in our way. Okay, I'm going to go up to assemble, go join. I'm going to hover over the outside circle, hold the command, and that allows me to select the very center of the nut. And same thing over here. Select the center there, moves the nut into place. All right. Show the bolt again. And go back. Okay. Then we see our assembly. And we can go make a jig that needs a T-handle knob like that. Okay. Let's stop the share. Any questions about those drawings?
That was really. Danny, were you not paying attention?
What's that?
Oh, Danny wasn't paying attention.
Was just hoping that this was being recorded.
I'm sucking
Oh,
this
yeah.
in. I wish it was recorded.
I know. Who would do something like that, though? Oh, wait, I am. That's right.
Okay.
Scared me. I had an
So-
appointment.
So what I'm going to do, if you give me just 1 second, I'm going to go into my Fusion and I'm going to quickly email 2 of those designs to Max, the humbucker template and the radius block, and he's going to build on those.
I have the other ones you send me. They're pretty much the same. Should
Yeah,
be.
you could use
Okay.
those.
Yeah, I can just use those. All right.
What's Max gonna do?
Suspense. This guy. Okay, so let me see. This is, you guys should see this, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then let me see if I can get you all out of the way so I can actually work. Okay, so we've seen, I'm just gonna do like a super quick recap on the hierarchy because we kind of like touched on it, but it might, it's because it's very important to grasp the distinction of the component and the body for once, and then then you start with the sketch, you get a body, you have the component. So the component is the actual physical entity that you're making that then can be manipulated in terms of joints, like Jimmy just showed us. You can't join 2 bodies. You can make them one body. You can unite them and have like 2 different bodies that become one, but you can't join them. And you want to do that because in the joints, you can actually then specify also if it's a fixed joint, if it's a something that's going to move, if you can set endpoints in the movement. So if you're actually modeling something that can resemble some sort of machine, or even like a jig that has moving parts, you want to be able to maybe animate those joints to see if your range of motion is enough, or if you have to shave some things here and there, and which is what's great about the modeling, because then you can actually make the mistakes on paper or on the screen before you actually cut parts and stuff. And so as we said before, you have your root component, which is like the home base where everything resides. And then you see here in the browser, it's basically like a folder structure on your Finder if you're on a Mac, or on File Explorer, where you have all your folders, and the component is actually a folder where you're creating something. And then inside there, you can actually nest more components so that you can have like let's say you're drawing a car and you have a component that's like the front suspension, but the front suspension has like, 85 different components. But then if you're joining the front suspension with the chassis, you can just do with the one higher level component without having to join everything together. Okay, so that's just like the one thing. The other thing that we didn't really go through real fast is that on your data panels, every time you create something, you have on your your personal space, and it's your cloud actually on Fusion. You have your projects that then you can arrange your parts into. And so like this is the CNC project where I have like some little things that I made there. And this again is a folder structure on the cloud where you save your designs and your things. And you can actually even share some of this stuff with the team or with other people. In this case, I see like there's a bunch of, different. So like say this folder here called Mirko, these are actually designs that I did for a friend, and he has access to them and he's still using them to this day, but they're like in the project. It's actually in my cloud, but it's fine. So if he needs some help, I can just go in there and check what the issue is and stuff. So we have a little project called three, and then you see like these are the 3 files that Jamie just showed us. And so we're going to go over this one to try and also show. And the other thing that you see right now on the data panel, you have the versions. So if you guys are not familiar with versioning, you can have a history of all the different permutation that you might have done of that file. So when stuff starts getting complicated, you might have, drawn a guitar body and have like a certain version, but then you go and change something, and then you have version 2, 3, 4, 5. And then every time you actually save the file, you add a different incremental version. But, sometimes you might mess something up and you want to go back to an older version. So here you can actually go and move basically the history back to the version that you actually wanted to work with. So like I use this all the time because like sometimes you do a design and then you kind of like start from scratch and you do another one. You might have like 2 different, slightly different versions of a fingerboard, and then one is like version 2 and the other one's like version 55. So I'm just like, well, I guess I worked on the 55 a little more than I worked on the other one. And so I know that that's the one I want to fiddle with. So that's the data panel. And so that's also, you can actually see if, what this is shared, who this is shared with. And it's because like Fusion, being web-based, it's also meant to be collaborative and stuff. And so that was something that was pretty useful. So the other thing is when you are working, you have the timeline. So as Brett mentioned, every time you do something, the timeline takes a snapshot of the command you did, whether it be, you create a new component, you create a new sketch, you do an extrude and all of that. One thing that's pretty useful is that you can actually go down here and name that feature. And so let's say that in your design, you're actually doing 5 different extrudes one after the other on the same component. You'll just have, the color here on top defines the component. You see like this color. I don't know if you guys can see the mouse, but this is the color that defines this component we're working on. And on the timeline, you also see that the first little action that was done was in the main component. And within the main component, we created a component. And so that takes on its own color. And then everything you do while this component is active is going to continue populate this one color. If you're in here and this is active, but you're working on this component, it'll still continue with this red purplish color here. So that it's easy to see what you're doing. But as I said, you can actually go here and name the sketch, which you can actually name up here as well if you wanted to, so that you have many sketches you can rename and you know what's what. But even the action you do here, so if I just go here and do, you know, plate thickness, or, you know, whatever you want to call this, and then you just know that then if you have like many different things, this is when you went here and you actually extruded the plate. So that can be convenient. And just as that, you can, you know, change the name of the component. So that's, you know, template. And that will reflect here as the template component and as the plate action that you did. Say you're, you know, extruding a bunch of holes, but they're different holes. So like you have, you know, the mounting holes or the registration marks and stuff. And so you can actually name the stuff that you do down here. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to leverage the fact that Fusion being a parametric system, you know, it's doing the math all the time when you're doing the design. And so you can actually go back and change certain things, and you can apply, what are called parameters, which Brett showed here when you go into the parameters, where basically you are assigning, you're defining certain numbers, certain variables that then you will refer to on your dimensioning, especially on sketches, which means that if then you want to go change something, you don't have to go back to the sketch and change a bunch of stuff. You can just go in your list of parameters, change the one number, and that will basically recompute everything. So we're going to go here on the sketch and we're going to see. So right now, here we have basically 4 dimensions that are relevant. We have on the 2 rectangles, you know, we have the width and the height of the main body for the pickup, and then we have the width and the height for the wings. And God bless the imperial system. And then you have the fillet radius. That's the same for all of that. So what we could do is we could actually, let's say we have a possibility that we might have an humbucker that has ever so slightly different measurements, and we don't want to model this all the time. We just want to have one thing that then we can maybe change the parameters and go and you know, print a different one or something. So let's just say this is, where are we? Let's start from this one. Okay, so this is 279 is the width of the main rectangular. So we'll just here and we'll say parameters. And we add a new parameter. So we create and we call main, and we call it the width. It's in inches, and we said it's what, 1.79. I can't see it, so I'll just guess it. And you can actually put a little note there. And right now you're just putting them in, and you're not really doing anything with it just yet. Then we'll just do it again, and we call it main height. Okay, and
1.6, I believe.
oh, thank you. What's it? 1 point?
1.6
All right. Great.
imperial units.
Yep. And then we'll do the wings. Wings width, it is
3.49, I think is what I had.
3.49. And then we call it again, wings
0.65.
height, and we call it 0.65. All numbers that make so much sense. And then we'll just even do a fillet just for kicks. And that was what,
188.
0.188. Okay, so right now we created these and we didn't really do anything. They're just there. So now I can go back into my drawing, and where we have the dimension, instead of typing it in, I go here and I start typing main, and it'll filter the dimensions that I have on my parameters. So we have the main width, and I press enter. And do we put something wrong? But that will. Did I put main width or main height?
It should have been 2.79. That's probably
All
my
right.
fault.
Well, that's perfect example. So I changed this. I go back and I'm like, oh, maybe that's wrong. So my main width is 2.79. Right?
Yeah.
And I adjust it here, and it already does all the math for me and just puts it there. So here we have the wings. And so again, I just start typing width and the wings width, and that's what it is. We'll go here. It's the wings height. And we go here, and it was the main height. Okay. So nothing has changed really. The other thing that we can do here is we'll do this and we call it fillet. And another thing so we could go and redo all of these, or see, this is a when it says FX, it means it's a formula, and the formula, if you stay and hover over it, it tells you that the D8, which is the dimension of this corner that you wrote in, it's equal to the fillet parameter that you set up. If I just go here, it'll tell me that D13, which is this dimension, is equal to that number that I put in. What I can do is double click on this and put again, my parameter, and hit enter, and that'll calculate it. Or you can actually say, since these are all the same, I can tell it that I want this one and this one and this, to be the same as this one. And this is D13. So if I click on it and then I just click on the other one, it'll automatically call it. It'll just tell me that D14, which is this dimension, will have to be the same as D13. The way if I change this one, it'll change the other one. So that might be a little bit faster sometimes, even if you don't have a parameter, but you want something to change with the one dimension, you can just specify one dimension and make all the other ones the same as that one, which we'll see again later with the knob, because this can be the same. It can be a parameter, but it can also be some simple math. Okay, so we'll just call this fillet. And we say, okay, we just go on this one. And we call it fillet. And we say, okay. And we call this fillet. And you guys see, we're going back to a drawing that wasn't really done with parameters in mind when it first was drawn. But the beauty is that you can go back and actually change stuff. And so right now we have the drawing is fully constrained, so all the lines are black, which is very important when you're working with parameters, because if you leave something that's undefined and you go and change later some parameters, the undefined stuff, since it doesn't have dimensions or it's not fully anchored to the drawing space, once you change the other parameters and stuff moves around, the part of the designs that are not fully defined or can act very erratically, and it just doesn't know what to do with it. And so I'll change it. So let's say we have this design, and like if I do finish sketch, it'll recompute our little template. But even from here, without going back to the sketch, if I just go here and change the parameters, and let's see if I can move this down a little bit so we can see while I'm working. And let's say I have a 7 string, and so the width will be, let's say, 3 inches, and the wings will be 3.6. Okay, that's it. And that is already done. And because the way Jamie designed it to begin with, where it was done with center rectangles, and so it's perfectly symmetrical and it's really centered in the center spot. When I go change these formulas, it'll grow, symmetrically on both sides, and it'll always be centered and stuff. And so even if, let's say, I wanted to then draw a line in the middle to help me for the alignment. Let's say I'm CNCing this instead of printing it on a 3D printer. I'll just do a line that then I'll trace. So then I can, center it properly on the center line of the guitar, because this is already all set with the center of the instrument. It'll always be perfect like there. Another thing that can be, you've seen before when we were applying fillets onto the template, there was a little warning down here that we used to come up. It was like, warning, constraints and dimensions might have been removed. So here you had a rectangle, and so the program set knew that this was parallel to this one, and it was 90 degrees to this one and this one, because it was a rectangle, and that these were 90 degrees. Once you do a fillet, some of those relationships actually get canceled and messed up. So sometimes, especially with fillets, I find that it's best to fillet on the solid. So on the sketch, you have all the general dimensions and all that stuff, but then you go and do your fillets. Let's just say, we wouldn't really do it here because it doesn't make sense on this template, but you just go and do your fillet on the solid. And even here on the solid environment, you can do your parameter and just do it like that. Okay, so you can do it. We could have done all these fillets, actually do them all at once, selecting all the corners that needed to be filleted. So you don't have to go and type fillet equals fillet equals fillet on all of them. You just do it to the ones you have to do, and that's the end of the story. So if you go back and change the parameter, the computer has to calculate this fillet operation just once for all the fillets that you've selected. Any questions on this? I see there's somebody on the chat.
No, that was good. I think that was Jerry. He
Oh,
had to
somebody
drop.
just, bye, Jerry.
Yeah.
He's gone now.
No, that was good.
Okay, another quick thing that, once you start printing a bunch of these things, something that could actually be useful is to actually, mark them or write something on them. We didn't see the text tool, which is actually pretty cool. So we can just create a sketch. You can do it on when you create a sketch, it always has to be on a plane or on a face if the face is flat. So this face is flat. So instead of choosing the origin, we can just do it here. We select this, and I can use the text tool, and it asks me to, see where I want to put the text. And then once you select the place, you can just write, humbucker, the 7 strings, and then you put the height of the thing, which wouldn't be 23 inches because that would be pretty big. Right?
Yeah.
And so we just do that, and then you finish the sketch, and you can actually extrude that. Another thing you guys want to familiarize with is the little shortcuts. So when you go on the commands, when you see this little letter around here, these are actually shortcuts that on your keyboard you can, instead of going to the menu or the thing. And so like, let's say Q is also press pull or extrude. Let's say E for extrude. And then you just select that little thing and we just go under by however much we want. Let's say 0.2 and minus 0.2. And we want to cut. Another thing, so Jamie was showing that you can do different things with the operations. And another cool thing is that here it asks you what objects you want to cut. Let's say this was a much bigger assembly and you just wanted to do this thing on the one body. You can tag off the ones you didn't want to do, and now you have your humbucker 7 strings. And if you go and 3D print that, this is done.
Nice.
Same thing if you wanted. What?
I said that's nice.
Okay. So we can go, I'm going to close this so my computer doesn't take off. We can do the same thing on the radius block, where again, it would be, you design this once, but then, as we all know, you might have many different radii that you want to use. So if you just make sure that you go and edit your sketch here again, this is a radius. Everything else is, this is not going to change much. This is not going to, so you don't have to do everything parametric, but you have, in this case, we have the one feature that's the radius that can be something that we are interested in having. And so we'll just do this and we'll call it, we create a parameter, we call it radius, and this is a 9.5. Again, this can be anything right now. And we'll actually use another one and we call it length. And we say it's 6 inches. All right. So here, instead of having the radius, I'll just put radius. So it's a parameter and it's done. Nothing changes in our design. And if I finish the sketch, this is exactly like it was before. Here is the extrusion we did, the first extrusion that Jimmy did. We can actually go and edit this feature. And instead of going back 6 inches, we go back length. Right? Again, nothing changes, but it's right there. The magic happens now. And then even if we go check this sketch, just to make sure that, everything was fine. It's all full defined. See, everything is black. You have the symmetry line, it's in the middle, it's fine. These are 10, and this is all looking perfectly fine. But what happens now is that if I just go here and I say, oh, I want to change the parameters, I want to have a 12-inch radius. Something. Wait, what did I do? Something is unhappy. Let's see. Failed to solve. Okay, let's go see what the issue is. Did we have a dimension that was... Do you guys see what the issue is?
Don't. This is an early one that I did in 2 different sketches.
Let's see. Let's see the sketch. The other cool thing is the inspect feature that lets you measure certain things. It might actually be that the radius, it's usually with the offset that sometimes you have some little issues. Let's see if this will offset position. Let's make this a little smaller. Let's see if that's, can I change the more fixed geometry? Oh, why is it fixed? Did we fix something in space?
Not that I did.
Sometimes there's
You know what? We'll just do.
Is
Yes.
that projected geometry from the first sketch? Like the outer shape of it?
So this is okay. This we did the fillets. And that was fine. And there's nothing really. It's just doing the
What's
offset.
What's the warning say?
Let you go back out. Just couldn't compute, but it doesn't say which
Oh.
one.
That's the worst warning.
Yep. So we'll just do this and do an edit sketch, and we'll just try and redo it, and we'll redo everything. Sometimes you need to do that. And so another thing we didn't talk about on the just the basically the environment. So S, if you press S on the keyboard, it brings up the shortcuts where you can actually save certain things that you use often and that they might not have their own shortcuts. So let's say if you go here and create an arc, you see that there is no letter for a shortcut on the arc. But if you, let's say you use the 3-point arc, I have it up here on the main menu, but let's say the center point arc is something you use often. You then put it and you can pin it to the shortcuts. And so when you're here in sketch mode, you do S shortcuts, and now you have it right here. Let's just say I want to do an offset, and I want to select this, and I want to do, let's do something that might be, well, let's try to, what do we do before? A 9.2?
On the later ones, I did 0.25. I don't know.
Let's do 0.25. Let's see if it's happy with this. The offset, sometimes when you have various shapes, is the one thing that it gets really unhappy. Another shortcut that I use all the times is X, which toggles the construction type line on and off. So you press X, it becomes a construction line. And so even before you draw the line, and then L is for line, you can go here, you have the little triangle, and we go down to the middle, and we have our little thing. And now I want to have the line to be non-construction anymore. And let's say we go here, we go down straight, and it's a 90 degrees, and we finish there. It made it in construction again, so we just click it and we deconstruct it. Again, for the shortcuts, instead of going here or create and sketch dimension, you see that there's a D. So if you're just here and you press D, you select this thing, you go to the middle, and we say it's 0.1 like it was before. So, and Jamie before drew a line here and then started from that line. Result exactly the same. But if again, maybe you, for some reason, you wanted to leverage the fact that you might change this with a parameter. If you have it here, you have a dimension, you put a parameter, you don't have to go and change the line. And then also, let's say we got this and we want to just mirror it, and we mirror it against here. So we just have the one dimension that does it all. And you can see if I hover over, these are closed blocks and the sketch has been computed. And I think we might, oh no, that's okay. Okay. Now I changed a bunch of stuff. And if we go forward, it's going to be like, wait, you extruded something. What the heck did you extrude? Because you changed the design on me. So we just go here and we see what we wanted to extrude. And let's say it was this one and this one. And again, instead of going -6 inches, we'll just go minus length. So it's the same parameter as before, and it'll update if we change something. Now, if we go to the fillet, again, it's like, what am I filleting? And it doesn't have the reference anymore. So that it was this one, it was this one, and it was this one, and it was this one. You see, sometimes it lets you select even through the solid. You just click it, and we'll do what, 0.3?
Sure.
Doesn't really matter. Again, if we have a parameter here, it's something, it's not really something you might want to change later on. So you use parameters where it's actually useful. And this one was done twice. Okay, so we don't really need to do that. We can actually go on the timeline, right click on the timeline, and we can say delete all features after the history marker. So the marker is where we're at, and we don't need to do anything after that. And so now let's see if doing it from scratch will actually work. So change parameters. We have a 12-inch, we want to do a 16. And there is something, it's the offset that's a pain. This thing, because I think because there's these features here and the corners, once you change the radius, the offset probably misbehaves, but you guys see the point. And then if you do it here, the other thing is like, oh, maybe I want to have it longer. And again, the second sketch will complain, but it'll create a longer thing. So you can actually have the one model that you can use for a bunch of different things.
I think some of that's my fault in the way I organized that drawing. I use a cut instead of-
No, I mean, I know for a fact that the offset thing, because it is very dependent on the shape that you're using.
Yeah.
If there are lines that can intersect with themselves, or that can change drastically, because like here, the offset, if you do a smaller, it won't be a pointy thing, it will be a little radius. So the offset does not work very well on complex curves, and that's just the nature of the beast. But you can just work around it, and instead of having this done on the parametric, you can actually add these features later, so that all the parametric is done, and you just do this cutout once the thing is done. Another thing that's actually pretty useful that we've seen here on this feature, instead of having the length here go with the parameter, you can actually say all. And so whatever the length of this solid is, this extrusion will go through the whole thing. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 inch or 100, it'll just cut through the whole thing. And so that's also very useful to use if you have something that you might want to change with different parameters.
Hey, Max, I'm sorry to butt in, but I am the host for some reason. I need to leave. Can I make
Oh,
you the
wait.
host?
No, make me the host, Devin.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that happened.
I don't know how that happened, but it was appropriate. All right, guys,
Okay.
have a great night and thank you.
Bye, Evan.
See you, Evan.
I want to, because it's already, we're approaching the 2 hour mark as
Yeah.
expected. We would have a lot of stuff to talk about, but let's see. I don't know, Jamie, I'd like to try and do something with the T handle.
Okay, yeah.
Where in this case you can have the thing that could be interesting to see is how let's forget about these components for a second, the nut and the thing, and just focus on the main knob. And once we go on to the design, edit sketch, or here, okay, yeah, so this was the previous version that was not constrained, so this will be horizontal, so everything is fully constrained. So let's say that we want to have this knob to scale for different size bolts. So we just want to design it once, and we want to have this work for again, in my head, this works much better with metric, because then you could have, this be in relationship with the other, but let's see if we can actually make this work anyway. This is not dimensioned, is it? Or do I not see it? Oh, it's right here.
Should.
Yeah, it's this dimension here. Let's move it. So, okay. So right here we have basically the diameter, the hole, the hexagon, the bigger circle that will go through, and then the length of the knob, basically, and these two. So if we use let's just say, so this was what 0.375. Let's just go and create some parameters. So we'll just call this bore, and we said it's 0.375, right?
Yep.
And then this is 0.75. It's the thing, let's say, which is
That's
double,
the
right?
part. What's that? Yeah.
This is pretty much, it's double, right?
Yep.
So we can say that the what should we call it? Knob
Outer diameter.
round, yeah, let's say outer round. Sorry, oh, the hyphen doesn't work, so you have to do. Okay, and we call this bore times 2.
Right.
All right, so it's an expression that refers to another parameter. And then here, it's the distance, what would that be? Can somebody do the math? What's, let's just say this is a 2/3 of the thing. So let's just call it,
Of the original.
yeah, this is, it doesn't really half hex, and we call it bore times 0.5. All right. No, that's a bit too much. So 0.6, that's 0.2, let's do a 0.7, 263, 75, 76,
Close enough.
75. Close enough. All right. And then we do, this is the knob, knob length. And this is bore times
3.33.
hmm?
3.33.
3.33. That's fantastic. And we have,
Point.
last but not least, is knob. I'll just call it width. And it's bore times
0.37, call it 5. 0.375.
and that's the 1 point, where was it? Yeah, okay. All right, so we have one dimension that will actually define everything. And so if we go here and we call this bore, okay, and we call this, what was it, knob? No, it was outer round. And we call this x half x. And we call this knob length, which is actually half of it, but not really. And then we call this knob width. All right, now let's see if the magic happens. And we got our little thing. Actually, let's do it on the solid. Whoop, we got this. And if we go modify, change parameters, we put this at 0.5. And voila.
Look at that.
The whole thing is perfectly scaled. And it's all
That's really cool.
like magic. And so here, if you actually then, even for the extrusion, for, you know, the thickness of it, if you refer that also to the one dimension, you could have, because the hexagon is not always perfectly proportional to the bore. So you might want to have two parameters, one for the bore, one for the hexagon. But then you change two parameters and the knob is done. And you can just have the one design. Then you just go, you print it, and Bob's your uncle.
That's cool.
And so then you guys can imagine with the parameters, especially when you have a lot of permutation of the same design, it can be super, super helpful because then you just do the one thing once and you can just reuse it or adapt it. So like the best example is if you're designing a fingerboard that's fully parametric, just by tweaking 4 parameters, you can actually do all the fingerboards you want. It can be, a compound radius. It can be a straight radius. It can be different scale length, different nut width, different taper, because you can put the bridge width on one side and not change the nut width. The side of the fingerboard. So with just like a few parameters, you can just do, if you do blind slots on the fretboard, how much you want the slot to end, before the edges. So you can have 2 millimeters, but it can be 2.5 or it can be shorter. And all of that, you just change the numbers and the solid will just be, and the beauty of it is that if you use Fusion also for CAM, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people use Fusion, because you have everything in one package. Once you have something parameter that then gets recalculated every time, the CAM, you just refresh it and all the operations of the CAM will be regenerated and it's all done and ready.
Wow, that's really cool.
We killed them.
You killed who?
Everybody.
I don't know about that. I'm fascinated.
Well, we are at 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Is
should
that right?
probably.
Yeah. Thank you, Brett, and thank you, Max, for helping with this. That was great.
You guys,
Like always, we had more in the can that we could pull out. That just means that we could have another episode, or we can make some videos and just post them.
yeah,
For
100%.
Yeah.
I highly recommend if we have the ability to post videos with Luth prints. So if you bang out a Luth print that you think has good modeling stuff in it, and you need help like wrangling, figuring out OBS or screen recording, let me know and I'll help you. I'll help you figure it out. But if you ever want to just post a video along with a Luth print, there could be some cool stuff in there. So
Okay. I like that.
yeah.
Are there any questions before we run away?
I want you guys to do more of these.
Definitely can.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks again. That was fun, and I learned a lot.
I learned a lot too, and I've been hitting Fusion hard for a while now, and there was a lot of good stuff in there. So thanks to everybody.
Cool.